Hey there, it's Carolyn Peters from Kira Studios, and today I want to talk about the 5 elements that make drawing into a universal skill. So if you've been studying drawing for a while, but you feel like you're not really improving anymore, today will be really useful to help you figure out where you're stuck, what you need to focus on so you can move forward again. So Brian Curtis, he wrote a book on observational drawing, and he says that drawing is a universal skill, just like riding a bike is a universal skill. And as long as you have access to a bike, anybody in the world can learn to ride a bike. And so for us artists, our bikes are our eyes and our hands. So if our eyes are decently working, we can all learn to draw. So our first element are the eyes that we need to figure out how do we use them better. And here are 5 sub-skills that I want you to think about. Everybody who has 2 decently working eyes, we can all choose to focus on things in different ways. The first way to focus on something is to look at the outer edges of something, the contours. This is usually how we begin when we start drawing. We just kind of draw the outlines of something. But we can also choose to zoom out a little bit more and start to perceive shapes and spaces. So that would be the second ability that our eyes have. First ability is contours, second ability is shapes and spaces. The third way we can choose to perceive things is by drawing relationships, comparing heights to each other, comparing how things align with each other, comparing widths and stuff like that. So that's the third ability our eyes have. The fourth way we can choose to perceive things is by looking at lightness and darkness. How light is the value of this? How dark is the value of that? And then lastly, we can zoom out even more and we can perceive the entirety of something, whether it's the entirety of a human body or the entirety of a still life setup or the entirety of an entire landscape. So we as artists, we need to train all those 5 perception skills. And if you notice that you mainly draw outlines or that you mainly look at values, then you now know there are 3 other things that you can get better at. So that is our first element. Now the second element is you need to believe that you can learn to draw. I know it's really basic and a little bit simple, but if you have this belief that you can only draw poor stick figures, or you can't even draw a straight line, or that you have to be extraordinarily talented in order to study drawing, then you get to keep that belief. If you argue for it, you get to keep that belief. So instead, adopt a better belief, adopt the belief that drawing is a universal skill, that it can be trained just like riding a bike can be trained. And once you have that belief, you can move right on to element number 3, which is build trust in your hand. Because the trick is, well, now that I know how my eyes work and how I can use them intentionally, how do I translate that and channel that into my hands? And for that, it comes back to what you think about your hands. Do you think that all your marks are messy? Do you think that all your marks are heavy-handed? That you can't ever make a right line? That you always make heavy-handed lines? What is it that you believe about that? You'll start searching for evidence for that, and you'll keep making those same things again. So now what you need to do is you need to train your hand to make new marks, so you can build that trust in your hand, so it can you can prove to yourself that your hand can make different marks. So that would include going through a bunch of exercises where you intentionally practice making very light marks, making very soft and fuzzy marks, making very precise and detailed marks, making very fast and gestural marks, making light to dark, dark to light, a bunch of variations. So you're basically training your hand like you would train a puppy, and certain puppies will pick up certain tricks quicker and certain hands will pick up certain marks quicker. But that doesn't mean you're going to give up on the things you want your puppy to know. So keep training your hand until you know you can trust your hand to give you a broad range of marks. The fourth element that you want to become aware of is that there is a certain process to creating a drawing. Whether it's a very linear and clear-cut process, or whether it's more interwoven. It changes from artist to artist, but there are different stages that every drawing goes through. The first stage is the gestural or searching stage, where you're coming up, where you're generating your idea. It's from the gut. It's very light, it's very loose. You're just basically placing things, placing a direction for the drawing. Then the second phase is your execution phase, where you construct things. You construct your shapes, you construct your forms, and it's very analytical or methodical. It's called methodical, and it's probably the longest phase of the process. And then the third phase is the finishing phase, where you intentionally bring focus to the areas in your drawing that you want the audience to notice first. Once you know that these are the three elements of the process, it's easier not to get confused in your own drawings, because you can come back to, what is the purpose of this phase right now? What should I be thinking about? All right, and then the fifth element that makes drawing truly a universal skill is you need emotional resilience and level-headedness to assess where you are within the process. So while you're drawing, you need to be able to stop yourself, step back and zoom out, and then ask yourself some questions about, how are things going? How are your relationships coming along? How are your values? And this is the key, really. As you're doing this, you need to stay cool, calm, and collected, because chances are that you made a mistake, just like anybody makes a mistake when they're drawing. But if you start beating yourself up over, it's all crappy, I can't do value right, if you start talking those kind of things to yourself, it's going to be hard to keep going. So instead, step back, assess, notice your mistakes, and then cool, calm, and collected, make your corrections, and keep moving without judging yourself. So those are the 5 elements that you can become aware of and train that will make you move forward in your drawing again. So let's recap. That means using your eyes intentionally. It means adopting a belief that will support you to get better. It means building trust in your hand by practicing. It means having an awareness of the process. And lastly, building that emotional resilience to analyze where you are within the process. So if you're interested in hearing more about the process, next week I'll be back with a drawing demo where I'll visually show you what those drawing stages look like. So hit the subscribe button if you're curious about that. I hope this was useful, and I'll see you next time.